and put in yes. And I'll know that you can hear me. So I've got a few people who still apparently can't hear me. Go ahead and give me a yes in chat. If you can't hear me, you may need to reboot your computer or restart the webinar on your end. Hello, who else can't hear me? Shane, can you hear me? Good, super. Okay, yes, you can call into our main number. They'll transfer you and I'll put you on speakerphone. And then you can at least hear the webinar. There you go. There's our main number if you want to call in, ask for Eric. Okay. We've got quite a group today. And what we're going to talk about basically is how to quickly review and interpret a LenderCheck 2, LenderCheck, RSRA. And if we have time, we'll get to phase 1 because the phase 1's a whole lot more complicated depending upon who does the phase 1 for you. So since most of you I don't know, I'm going to give an overview of my background. But the first thing is I want to tell you that if you have any question, if you have any question or you have any concerns, go ahead and call me. If you can't hear me, maybe re-log into your internet and then re-log into the webinar. So re-log into internet or webinar if you cannot hear me. Okay, that should square everybody away. Okay, so I'm going to get started. We're probably going to get interrupted a couple times, and that's okay. Again, chat any question you have. Don't worry about interrupting me. Sometimes I start talking really, really quick, and to slow me down is a smart thing to do. Since I don't know most of you and most of you are new clients, I'm going to go over my background. So in 1985, I graduated from UC Davis in resource science with a minor in soil science, water science, and environmental toxicology. The environmental toxicology program was one of 2 environmental programs in the nation. There were only 2. Anyone who says they got a degree before that from a different college, it's an impossibility because they didn't exist. So I started out in environmental, and since I had a general contractor's license, I went right into remediation and did some of the first innovative cleanups in the nation, put in the first air stripper in Silicon Valley in Santa Clara. This is Eric.
Hey Eric, I got a transfer for the webinar.
Super, go ahead. So anyway, in any case, I went into the environmental business. I went to work for a small company and helped build that company in the mid-'80s up to 22 million gross and about 120 people. Can you hear me?
Hi, hello?
Yes.
There's another transfer.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
So, do I got both people on the phone?
Win is here.
Okay. If I lose you, you may have to call back in. I'm trying to conference one person in. Okay, do I got both you? Hello? Hello? Okay, I think I got everybody. Okay, so in any case, my background in 1991, I started a company called Phase One Incorporated. For the next 28 years, we did environmental site assessments, or Phase One environmental site assessment. We are the first ones to put a fixed cost on them and not do them time and material. And then also in about 91, 92, I became one of the first reviewers and writers of ASTM 1527 standards for Phase One. And I've sat on the committee for ASTM for the standards for Phase Ones and a whole bunch of other things for, gosh, 25, 26, 27 years. And again, we're rewriting the standards this year and meeting in October to start that process. So from there, we developed ERS. And why did we develop ERS? ERS, remember, we're doing tens of thousands of Phase One reports a year. And we need the historical data and regulatory data according to the standards, right? And you need to either go out and get them yourself or you need to do them. So about 15, 16 years ago, we were actually using EDR. And we said, hey, we don't like the data we're getting. and we wrote reports designed by environmental professionals for ease of use and started doing our own data. It took us 2.5 years to acquire all the data, and now we've got databases that nobody else has and nobody else can get again because they don't exist, and except for in our data set. And we started doing databases. The next thing you know, our databases, ERS databases, are showing up in our reports that other companies are reviewing, and they like the report. So they call us and say, hey, our competitor would call us up and say, hey, can we buy your report? And so next thing you know, ERS starts growing. And next thing you know, ERS grew bigger than phase one. And so that's where we are today. We pretty much wound down phase one Inc. and no longer do that. And we really are focused on ERS, the environmental database company that does all kinds of risk analysis and kind of thing. And we try to design user-friendly, very complete, high-quality database reports. Back in 2000, I think it was about 2006 or 7, I got a call from the then SBA director out of Washington, D.C., and asked to participate in writing the environmental standards for SBA loans, particularly the 504 and 7A loans. And took us 2.5 years working with 6 attorneys. There were 3 of us, 3 consultants, me being one of them. The other 2 were just little environmental firms. And they called us because of phase one. And I participated in that, and it was painful, believe me, working with 6 attorneys for 2.5 years, one of them being Eric Adams, who's currently in charge of all the review out of the Sacramento office. And we wrote the new standards, and now they've become law, and in it is the RSRA. So the standards for doing an RSRA, and they do have some standards for a phase one, and an ASTM 1527 standards, and the all appropriate inquiry by PA, which really shadows or mimics, or either one mimics each other. The ASTM standards are really be exactly the same. Really dictate our reports, and we make sure all our reports cover something in that, and make sure that, you know, if somebody uses it in their file or uses it for screen or uses it for whatever, that it's going to cover you, protect you for your environmental due diligence. So remember, if you have any questions, you know, go ahead and just go ahead and ask them in chat anytime as I'm talking. That's my background. I've got lots of experience. I don't know it all. I'm an old guy. I'm learning every day new things. I hire a lot of new young people because I like people who think outside of the box and learn things. So I'm learning every day, just like you're attending this seminar. And hopefully in this seminar, you pick up a trick or two. Now, I'm going to go over our reports. Of course, I will touch on other people's reports and what to look out for. So what we're going to do is we're going to start real quick, and we're going to talk about how to quickly review and interpret a report. Now, you can't interpret an environmental report if that report, well, has interpretation for you, or you're an environmental professional and know what to look for. So if you get any environmental screening report like a LenderCheck 2 or a loan check, which is real similar to our LenderCheck, or an RSRA, and some people use transaction screens, You should be able to interpret them real quickly. They should be interpreted for you. If there isn't a conclusion in a report, and you look at it and says, well, the report doesn't say anything bad. Of course, it doesn't say anything good either. It doesn't say anything. It just has a bunch of gibberish. And you review it, put it in your file, because since it doesn't say anything bad or doesn't have any conclusion, then everything must be all right. Therefore, my site is clean. Wrong. That isn't right. You just by doing that, by reviewing that report and assuming, right or wrong, assuming that there's no problems with your site, now took the liability. It now falls on your insurance, your company, your bank. You just bit the dust. You put it in the file and you move on. So your risk reduction by doing that report isn't a reduction. It's an increase in environmental risk. Your due diligence failed you. So you really got to be careful what vendors you use and what information you get. If they're sitting on a fence on a phase one, well, maybe, kind of, sort of, you need to do further work. We can't tell you that there's no further action needed, or they say, well, we don't really kind of think this is a problem. So we're going to, because we really don't know, we're going to say no further action. Wow. You better hire another environmental consultant, because you're paying big bucks for a phase one. You're paying big bucks for any of the reports. You really need to get your value, and you can't have people sitting on a fence. Now, one of the things I offer to all our clients, and if you become a client and start using any of our reports, you get any type of report, phase one, an RSRA, a loan check, a lender check, any kind of report from anybody else, and you don't understand something on it, you question the results, the conclusion, send it to me. I'll look at it for you. I'll give you an honest opinion, and I'll do that over the phone and email for free. If you want me to put it in writing, I'm going to charge you. Or if you want me to do some work, I'm going to charge you. But I'll read it and I'll interpret it and I'll tell you what you've got for free. And just be forewarned, I'm very opinionated on things, and I really believe in doing it right in the long run saves you a lot of money and time. So let's go over the LenderCheck 2. Let's go and show you how easy it is to see LenderCheck 2 and how easy it is to identify your site. So first of all, the first thing I always tell everybody on a LenderCheck report, and here's the LenderCheck report. You can see it right there. It's the LenderCheck 2. It's really our environmental screening report. This report is very inexpensive. If you just go online and order them, the retail price is $39.95. Very inexpensive. Commercial saying any loan, whether it's SBA, whether it's anything, any commercial loan whatsoever, come in the door, run one of these reports before you even enter it into your system. Just put the address in, go to our website, put the address in, order it. You'll get the report in a matter of minutes via email. You'll get a link to download the report. Therefore, hopefully we don't get spammed. Every once in a while we do get spammed. So you need to check that if you don't get the report after you order it. And why do you screen before you even decide whether you're going to do the loan or not? This is part of the decision in deciding whether you're going to do the loan or not. If you find out this thing has a high risk rating, it's telling you you're going to have to do probably a phase one, and you may have to do phase two sampling. So you at the least, before you decide to do this loan, you want to know that the client's willing to do those things and pay for those things, because you don't want to get to the end of the loan and then the underwriter says, oh my gosh, you need some environmental, you need to do a phase one. You go to the client, it's going to be another 2 weeks before you get your loan, and it's going to cost you another $2,000. And they go, well, I'm going to another bank. You just wasted all your time, labor. You did the appraisal, you did the credit check, you did all that stuff. You started putting the loan documentation together, and guess what? The client dives out on you because of an environmental issue. 39 bucks could have saved you thousands. $39, big deal. Think about it. And if you do multiple sites on a regular basis, we'll sign you up on a subscription basis, monthly subscription basis, or yearly subscription basis. You take your choice, we'll work with you. And once we set, I like the yearly because when we go off your base volume now, if you do more, you don't pay more. Wow. So it helps you grow. Now, the next year around, we'll reevaluate that and say, hey, we got to raise the price a little bit because you did so many, right? But that's okay. So we help you grow too. If the other thing that we will do with these reports, we will also send them to your environmental consultant if there's a medium, high, or high, if you want us to. That way, then they'll automatically get it, review it, and say, hey, Joe, you know, you need to do this. I agree with their results. So let's look at this report a little bit. Anybody got any questions so far? I guess that's a no. So here I go. I'm talking pretty quick again, but I'm getting worried about time already, and we're only 20 minutes in. So this is the cover page of the LenderCheck 2. You can see in the LenderCheck 2 that right on the cover, it says the environmental risk rating is medium. Okay? Anything above a low is something you need to review. And so right here it says, have an environmental professional review the listings in the LenderCheck report and determine the next step, such as perform an agency file review or historical review of the listing. Because lots of times, a medium is someone just needs to check it out and make sure it's not an issue. And we'll go into that just really quickly. So realistically, you can stop right here and say, hey, call up your environmental person, Joe, and say, hey, I'm going to send over this LenderCheck report. Just take a peek at it and tell me if you think I need to do anything. But before I did that, I would check the site location. I want to make sure that I put in my site address correctly. We put in your site address correctly. Whoever put it in, it was put in correctly, and it's your site. So here's the site address, 90 Phoenix Avenue, Lowell, Massachusetts. Well, that looks correct. Cool. But I want to look at one other thing just to make sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this ribbon on the left-hand side. See that? This is a PDF. I click on that ribbon, and now this allows me to get around my site really quickly and get around this report really quickly and easy. So if you want more than the cover page before you take any action, cool. Then all you do is you click the bookmarks, open them. Now, you got the report cover we were just at, you got the risk, you got the table of content. You go to the table of content and click on any of these tables, it'll take you to the same place as these. Really simple. So, remember, we're verifying it's our subject site. So the first thing I would do after I saw that the address is correct, I need to know that I'm on the correct building or property. So I'm going to click on the 16th of a mile map. The 16th of a mile map gives you a quick shot of what's around your site. So here we have our star, that's our site, and we have a big building. Well, I know the shape of that building. I know it's on Lau Research Center Drive. That's my building. I've confirmed it, everything's met. But what are all these yellow, green circle, red squares? What are they? Man, I'm a little concerned. There's a red right next to my yellow, and I'm yellow. How come? Excuse me. You're yellow because you're meeting. You've got to look into a few details, and we'll go over what details those are. But the description of what red, yellow, and green is at the bottom of this map, but I'll really quickly tell you. Green is good. Green means it's a closed case, it's an innocuous site, it's not a problem. Yellow is the agency database didn't give us enough detail to determine whether it's open, closed, a concern or not for your site, so it needs to be looked into. So either the agency needs to be called or a file review needs to be done or some research on Google needs to be done. But it needs to probably be done by an environmental professional. Unless you have somebody in your bank or company that does environmental work, they'll be able to do that. The red is bad. And this is right adjacent. So I really got to know what that red is. But red is bad. That's an open case, a super fun site. It's something bad. You see red, bad. You might not even want to do this loan because you may have to put some borings on your site to see if this red did anything. If you got to do a phase 2, you're talking $5,000 to $10,000. You don't want to have to do that. So I'm looking at that. That's map location number 2. And my site's map location number 1. Well, where do I get the details on that? Oh, map ID 1 details. So I click right to them. And there's map ID detail. So map ID number 1 is telling me right away that my site has a well. And it was completed in 1994. And it's a monitoring well. Whoa. That's kind of scary, right? Right away, the subject site has a monitoring well. Man, I want to pull that file and find out what's going on in that site. What else is going on? It handles hazardous materials, coatings, coating system. So it uses hazardous materials. And who knows whether they use volatile organic chemicals or not, which can give you, once spilled on the ground, can seep into the ground and cause vapor intrusion. So right here, I'm concerned. I want you to note, here's the link to go find the details on this listing at the governmental website. So we also put the links when it's available so you can find out more information. And you'd probably have your environmental professional do that. So they're manifesting, so they're disposing of hazardous materials properly, all that kind of stuff. So what is ICIS? I have no idea. I've been in this business 35 years. What is it? Well, I'm going to go look at the definition. And so what is ICIS? Whoop. ICIS, Integrated Compliance Information System for Federal Enforcement Data. It tracks all the formal administrative and judicial enforcement action. So there is an action taken on my site for some sort of kind of cleanup or something. Oh my, that's bad. I'd probably step this up from medium to high and recommend doing, if I was the environmental professional, in this case, I'd recommend doing a phase 1. There's no doubt in my mind. So let's go back to detail 1. We're on detail 1. Let's look at detail 2, that red baby. Well, they've got wells too, monitoring wells. New monitoring well, recent. Now, 2004 is not very recent, right? It's historic manufacturing. They built testing apparatuses. This is that adjacent site. So remember, normally you would have an environmental professional look at this stuff. They had a release of hazardous materials. So they had a release. They cleaned it, still put in monitoring wells for some reason. I went too far. So we're going to have to pull that file and see why they put in monitoring wells. And that may be, they put in monitoring wells, it may be because just to verify that they didn't have any contamination. So they dispose of, they have potential uncontrolled emission. That really means that they're handling chemicals, whatever, like solvents, that kind of thing. So that could be a vapor intrusion problem for you, depending upon what's in that well and why that well was put in. But so you're starting to get the idea. There's a lot of detail in these reports to help you make a decision on whatever you want to do with the loan and whether you want to process the loan. And that's for $39.95, guys. And you get it in a matter of minutes. That's pretty slick. And if you ever get to one of these and you just don't want to deal with trying to interpret some of the detail, don't. Call me up. I'll look at your report and I'll tell you what you got. And like I said, in this case, mainly because our site has a monitoring well on it and uses hazardous materials, then I think you need to do a phase 1. You don't want to jump to a phase 2 unless you have to, but you surely want to do a phase 1. So let's say this loan just walked in the door. Right away, you know you need a phase 1. You're going to say to the client, look, you know, once you run their credit thing, see if it's even a deal you want to do. Then you're going to tell him, hey, we're going to have to do a phase 1 on this site. It's going to cost you X dollars, and it's going to take the loan process another couple weeks. Are you good with that? And if they are, they are. You got your deal. If not, don't put a lot of work into this site because you don't want to lose the money. So as you can see, a LenderCheck 2 for the screening is really gives you a lot of information. So let's go to the executive summary. This also gives you the flood zone. In this case, it's just giving you the panel it's at. Lots of times it describes that panel, whether it's a 100-year flood zone, whatever. And then you can go to FEMA and just look up that panel. It's really easy. And so it is not a flood certificate, but it is it tells you what it is. We'd have to physically go look it up to give you a certificate on that. And really our computers look it up for us, right? So real quickly, you get a lot of information, lat long, whether the site's listed or not, so you can click to the details, number 1 again. Really nice. So let's go to the location map. If you've been to the site, another good map to make sure we're on the right site or to see what's next door to your site that has the red square is go to the aerial photo, the site location aerial. And you can see this and you can zoom in on this and you can look at it and it gives you a whole idea what's adjacent to your site, around your site, where your site is, make sure it's on the right site. And there you go, we got the right site and it looks pretty good. In some cases, like if you're dealing with automotive or vacant land that's got a lot of junk stored on it and stuff, you can see the junk or you can see staining and that kind of thing. So all this is valuable information, and it's all in the LenderCheck 2. Now, the LenderCheck 2 only goes out to the 16th of a mile, really basically adjacent site. It doesn't get way out here. It only gets out a 16th of a mile. And why is that important? If you've got a site that could be a problem, you want more search further out, and you want more databases searched. This is limited databases. This isn't meant to be used in phase 1 environmental site assessment report, whereas our LenderCheck pulls in all the databases, all the historical. We have 28 proprietary historical databases, about double our next competitor, dry cleaners, automotive, historic manufacturing, historic lust site, you name it, we've got it. And that's valuable information. So if this site, your subject site on the LenderCheck 2 is anything higher than low, running the regular LenderCheck sometimes will give you enough information to make a decision on what you need to do. And sometimes it'll make a decision for you. It might even go up or go down on the risk rating, really depending upon the data we pull in. So this is the LenderCheck 2 report. Anybody got any questions? Very easy to use, very easy to interpret. Now the LenderCheck 2 can be, let's say you do a LenderCheck 2, here's LenderCheck 2. It doesn't have the results up front, just says medium. It does have the site location. Now the LenderCheck is sufficient, exactly the same report, the RecCheck report for environmental companies to put in their phase 1. It's the exact same thing, except for it's got an environmental risk rate. So you could actually, if you were going to order a phase 1 off of this report, you could say, hey, I've already got the 1 mile radius database search report, and they're insured. One thing I failed to mention in the beginning of this talk, every single one of our reports are covered by $2 million of environmental professional errors and emissions insurance. $2 million. Your environmental company, at a minimum, is supposed to have $1 million. Our policy, our certificate that we send out with our LenderCheck report states it covers environmental. If you don't get a certificate that says it covers environmental, you better call the broker and find out if they got environmental. A lot of people say they have $1 million professional liability insurance or errors and emissions insurance for their engineering firm or their environmental firm, whatever. But if it doesn't have an environmental rider, you're not covered. These are environmental reports. The phase 1 is an environmental report. You take the entire risk again. Now, our largest competitor says they got $30 million of general liability insurance. It's great. Love it. But their insurance certificate doesn't say covers environmental. No good. Unless they have a separate rider covering environmental, all their reports are worthless to you. And in fact, when you go to the terms and conditions, if in limits and liabilities section of the report, if it states that we don't stand behind the report, have a environmental professional review all the conclusions and review the report and make a comment, that's because they don't want to take any liability. It also will say, and if we end up in court, we're only going to cover you for what you paid for the report. You're not covered. It's a worthless report. Don't use it. Be smart. Protect your bank and protect your company. So ours says we'll protect you up to the limits of our insurance. Pretty standard. Now, what's the odds of us getting caught doing some sort of negligence or errors or whatever? It's very slim. There's no doubt about it. And it's never happened with us. And in the 28 years phase one was in business, phase one never got sued and never used its insurance. So that's pretty good when you think about it. So we kind of know what we're doing, we think. And we're out to protect you. That's our job, is to make an easy to use report to protect you. So the LenderCheck 2 is more details, more databases, and goes out a mile. So remember, the first thing you do is you check your address, then you go to the 16th mile radius map, exactly the same thing because it's 16th mile radius map, right? Cool. But let's go to the quarter mile radius map. Holy cow. Everybody see all those red around? Man, I'm telling you, they're even more likely to do a phase one. And I've got a phase one immediately adjacent to, a red one immediately adjacent right here. See where my cursor is? Why didn't that show up on the 16th of a mile map? Because where the address is plotted is outside the 16th of a mile ring. Boom. But you already have this one that's already alerting you to problems around your site. Now you see more problems, but you got more detail and you got more information to work with. So I'm going to again go to the site location aerial and look at it, make sure it's my site. Now I verified it's my site. Now I'm concerned I'm a medium. I ran this because I wanted to learn a little bit more about the site. We know the risk level. We can go to the executive table of contents and get around. We can go to the executive summary. We're going to see a whole lot more information in the executive summary. We see if we needed history, there's fire insurance maps cover. We got the soil type. Remember, this was more designed for environmental professionals or somebody who's got some environmental background to reviewing your site. We now have the zone. It's an X zone. So it really type the zone in there. You can rely on that, but it is still not a flood certificate. So if you need a flood certificate, get one from, First American Title or whoever does them. There's a lot of places that do them. This is the risk to the site. Now there's more detail. And it really spells out the key to the environmental risk rating. Now remember, our environmental risk rating is the first of a kind. It's starting to become used just like a credit rating. Everybody's running one of it. LenderCheck 2 is your most inexpensive way to get an environmental risk rating for your site. We are coming out with an app any day now. It's being tested and it's being approved by Apple. It's already Android approved. And we're coming out with an app where you can literally, once you download the app and sign up, you can stand in front of the property, hit a button, it'll develop an email for you. You send that email, and in a matter of minutes, back comes a real one-page screen telling you what you have on that identical property before you even think about buying it or financing it or inspecting it or whatever. And if it's a super fun site, you run down the street. Anyway, I'm kidding you. But in any case, and that's going to be free for who knows how long. But we've got to test it out. It'll be in beta testing by a lot of people. You should give it a try when it comes out, and we'll send you an email if you're our client. So become our client because we're creating tools that are going to help you do your job and do your job better. So LenderCheck is more detailed. So let's go into it. So Here's a list of summary of occurrences. And so these are all a map IDs. So your site is listed a whole bunch of times. You can see historical finds, manufacturing. Now we pulled in all the history, historical stuff, still ICF, manifest, RCRA, wastewater, wells. We see the adjacent site has far more details. What's nice about this detail page, if you want to go find out more about the RCRA listing, you can click on one as the details. It'll take you right to the same thing as this, or you can look at any of the maps. That's a crazy map. That's 1 mile radius. Who wants to look at that, right? I would. That's just too much data all in one thing. But the quarter mile is nice, the 16th of a mile. So you can click on those map things. And right here, 4 is the 1 mile, 3 is the 16th of a mile, 2 should be the quarter mile. And I think 2's probably, when you get in congested areas, I think 2's the best. So now let's look at something else that we didn't see before. And I keep saying more detail. We're going to go to the mapped air permits. See these little triangles? Those are, we took air permits and based on prevailing wind direction that we got from NOAA, we plot a potential dispersion plume for these air permits. An air permit is a license to release hazardous materials in the air. So, excuse me. So if you were looking at this thing and you were building, loaning on an apartment complex in the middle of this, you might want to think about that a little bit because that's downwind contamination and it is in the air. Depending upon how far away you are, it's probably diluted to where it doesn't affect anything. But this is a heads up. If we have time, remind me and I'll show you a map of downtown Boston and it's just black with these plumes. And nobody, not even the environmental health or anyone, is evaluating the risk downstream from these things. They only issue an air permit to release hazardous materials in the air, volatile chemicals for the most part, for smog reasons, to evaluate smog, and they try to limit them and so they aren't all bunched up, so they don't create more smog. So in this case, our clients, our environmental clients, use these reports, and they use this to identify people who use volatile organic chemicals like solvents or perchloroethylene, dry cleaning solvent, or anything like that. And they use that to determine whether the site they're doing a phase 1 on could potentially have vapor intrusion. Because remember, a phase 1 doesn't do any sampling or testing. Phase 1 determines if there is or is the potential for environmental impairment. And that's what a phase 1 does. Okay, so this report, the LenderCheck, gives you a whole lot more information to review, a whole lot more detail. Look at all the listings. We didn't have that many listings before, and it really gives you everything you need. Any questions on the LenderCheck report? It's probably got far more than you need until you get into the process of really doing a lot. They're $79. We do monthly, we do yearly subscriptions. We work with you. Okay, if we don't have any questions, somebody at least say, no, I don't have any questions. So I know you're paying attention. I'm not talking to a microphone. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. I'm feeling like I'm kind of left out here on an island because no one's asking any questions. So I must be doing a good job. So let's go to the RSRA since there's no questions. Okay, ERS does SBA record search with risk assessments. We call them an RSRA. A lot of people, the 900-pound gorilla calls them transaction screen. They did that because, remember, we developed this standard and named this standard and sell and market this standard as an R record search with risk assessment. And so EDR was afraid to use the names, so they used the transaction screen. And I don't think a transaction screen gives you quite as much information as this. Now, as of January 1st, the SBA came out with a new law which makes it fall for any environmental record search with risk assessment, transaction screen, whatever, that it has to be written by an environmental professional as defined by ASTM and all EPA, all appropriate inquiry. And they have to submit their resume. Also, in a phase one, and the environmental professional has, as of January 1st, has to have $1 million of environmental errors and emissions insurance. And all that should be put into your phase one, including the environmental assessor's resume, so you can look at it and verify they comply. So it's very important in your SBA record search that you're getting it done by a reputable company. Now, again, I said we do these things. We charge $259. We do not just automatically default to a high risk. The SBA standards say you assign a low risk or high risk or low risk or elevated risk, and that's it. If it's an elevated risk, you must do a phase one environmental site assessment, and or if the environmental consultant suggests a phase two, anything higher than that. So what's that telling you? Well, they're having problems with the environmental company giving recommendations and the lender saying, hey, I don't want to do this. I don't think it's needed. And the SBA got tired of arguing it. So as of January 1st, they put a statement and made it law that basically in their standards that you must do what the environmental assessor recommends. Therefore, you want to make sure you don't use an environmental assessor or company that just defaults to a phase one, to a high or elevated rating. Now, some of our competitors use outside environmental firms to write their record searches with risk assessment, and so they're not taking the client into account as much. What we do when we write them, and keep in mind we wrote the standards, so we have a good relationship with the people who review these, and so we have no problems getting these through. If we think it's going to come out high before we issue a high report, we're going to call you up and say, hey, we think if we interview this person, we're going to be able to clear this thing up. Or if we look at this file review, we may be able to clear this up and save your client from doing a phase one. And then we'll write the results of that into the record search with the risk assessment. And we'll charge you for that, maybe $150, depending upon what it is. Or maybe we need to review a phase one. Someone turned up a phase one, or who knows what. That'll relieve the situation. We'll relieve it rather than just default to high. Now, in doing these, there's a lot of people who default to high, and then in the phase one, doing the phase ones, they default to doing phase two instead of making a conclusion. because they don't want to take the liability on. Well, if they do a phase one properly, the fact is you either need to do a phase one or you don't. And it should be backed up with facts. And a good phase one is always backed up in fact. So we go back to make sure the consultants you use don't sit on the fence, don't do default just to doing phase ones or phase twos, because you're getting an injustice and your client, you're losing loans, your client's getting pissed, everyone's getting pissed. So this is the record search with risk assessment. Again, you can hit the bookmarks and jump around. Now, our layout of a record search with the risk assessment is very clear. Right up front, again, you have an executive summary. And so your site is listed because you have the same database as a LenderCheck in the appendix of this report. So with the RSRA for $259, you get that $79 LenderCheck because it's got to be reviewed by a professional. So you get all the same stuff in the executive summary as a LenderCheck. Let's go down, summary of occurrences again, potential areas of contamination, database occurrence summary. There's the 1 mile radius database search. Let's go back up to the executive summary and let's go back up to the top of the report. So let's go here. Let's scroll down in the RSRA. And the report, we're looking at the executive summary of the LenderCheck. The executive summary of the report, this one's low. We don't think you need to do anything. But right away, check and make sure it's the right address. And you can do it in the site facts. So right here, we identified additional previous addresses. So this 88th Street West, whatever, used to be Cleveland Avenue. Wow. And it's a church. And make sure all that works. And then you get the history. From 42 to 2018, a church constructed. Make sure all this data makes sense because it's telling you a lot. And you're just really, you got a low risk rating. A lot of clients read that low and stop. They're done. They're ready to go. They submit this with their paperwork to the SBA. So here's the conclusions and recommendations. So we reviewed everything. We identified there was floor drains and grease traps on the questionnaire. Because remember, you've got to fill out a questionnaire. When you order a RSRA, not only do you get the LenderCheck database report, but you also get a copy of our questionnaire. You can use yours and send it to us filled out, or you can give ours to your client, let them fill that out and give it to us. Questionnaire is part of the standards and has to be done. In this case, we reviewed aerial photos all the way back to 51. The new standards, you have to include aerial photos in the appendix, copies of what you review, copies of the fire insurance maps if you review them, and the city director. People were fudging. The SBA got tired of catching people not doing their job. They made it a law and standard as of January 1st, 2018. We have always done it. A lot of our competitors raised their price. Remember, we write these in-house. We've done it, always done it. We didn't have to raise our price. We've been $259 since Donna Man. I'm going to raise it soon, though. Watch out. Then we've got the historical city directories, the years reviewed. And remember, you can look those up in the appendix and see them for yourself. If you haven't ever seen historical city directories, they're pretty cool. So this is a Lowe's site. We actually called the assessor's office because we had a question about it. And we wanted to get a permit for the structure that was relocated, where it was relocated from, so we could see if it had any problem. ERS Rec Check review, that's where we reviewed the LenderCheck or the RecCheck report, same thing. And overall environmental risk, we decided it was low. An environmental professional, meaning Kieselbach signed it. There's our limits and liabilities. You're going to see you can rely on this report, and we cover you with our insurance. So, you know, there it is. Anyone got any questions on the RSRA? Really user-friendly, really good. I would recommend, instead of doing a transaction screen, not doing an RSRA for anything where you do a transaction screen. It doesn't have to be an SBA loan. If you have an intermediate process before just jumping to do a phase one, if you're sitting on a fence on a phase one, these are $259. They're really complete. The biggest thing is they have a lot of history in them, and that's where you find most of your problems in a phase one is the history or the site walk. So running one of these RSRAs, getting the questionnaire as somebody who's been on site filled out, guess what? It's a great product, it's inexpensive, and it's going to tell you whether you need to do a phase one or not. So it's pretty slick, and sometimes you can resolve issues, you know, for another $150 in the RSRA and not have to do a phase one. And it's signed, and we stand behind it with our environmental insurance, and it's done by an environmental professional. Pretty cool. So, any questions? I already ate up my hour. Can you believe it? Okay, so I'm not going to talk about phase one. What is the cost for an RSRA? $259 for any site anywhere in the U.S. And one of the things we do, we review all the documents right up front, because if you fall under the NACE code that requires you to just jump to a phase one in the SBA stuff, we're going to tell you, because we don't want you to waste your money. Remember, we're out to make your job easy and protect you. We're trying to protect you against any kind of environmental risk and keep you from doing unnecessary steps and doing more than you need to, and from losing clients we work with. We also have life loan. We'll take your whole commercial loan database and data and every quarter run it and see what's changed. See if now in that strip mall there's a dry cleaner using PCE, or this little warehouse turned into an automotive repair. I mean, it's all kinds of stuff. Does the cost of the RSRA go towards a phase one if required? We don't do phase one. So no, it doesn't. But the environmental company you work with should at the least be able to use the database and the aerials and the city directories, and they should give you a discount on it. And if they don't, let me know. I'll be glad to talk to them, and I bet I can talk them into it. And if they say, well, we can't rely on their work, they can. We're insured. And it's done by an environmental professional, so that's bull. So if we did phase ones, we'd be glad to do that, but we do not do phase one environmental site assessment. But we can recommend in the local area where the site is someone who does do phase ones and someone who will give you some credit. So just let us know. But we really bend over backwards to help our clients and work with our clients. And remember, you can always call me with any question. I'm on the phone or in meetings all the time, and I'll get back to you if you leave a message as quick as I can. Send me the report you got a question on, or if it's one of ours, I can look it up really easy. You just have to have the number. We're out to make your life easy, cost effective, and to reduce your risk, and we stand behind it. Remember, technically, we've been in business 28 years. We've never been sued. ERS is its own corporation, has its own insurance. It's great. It's a great company. Everything was developed by environmental professionals. So think about that. Not a bunch of, just computer people. So it's pretty important. So any other questions? Okay, if you don't have any other questions, thank you very much for attending. We really hope we can earn your business. If you want copies, samples of anything, copies of anything, we do not have an outline for this, but we can send you the sample SBA, record search with risk assessment, the LenderCheck, and the LenderCheck 2. All you got to do is contact Susanna L at reccheck.com, and she will send you anything you want. You can contact me. We do not have salespeople, so you're never going to get us visiting us office unless you request me to come in. We will also do these webinars for your entire office or for your group of offices or whatever, and we'll set up a private webinar for you, and we can structure it any way you want it structured. So let us know. They're free. We do them to try to earn your business. So if there isn't any questions, thank you very much for attending. I appreciate it. And we look forward to working with you.
Eric,
Yes.
I think Katie has a question.
Who? Oh, Katie. How come she's not coming up?
It's through the chat.
Oh, yeah. Well, what is the cost? I already answered that, right? And I answered, does the cost of the RSA go towards a phase one? I answered that. I think I answered all her questions. Katie, have I answered all your questions? Great. You're very welcome. Yes, I've answered all her questions. Well, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
I'm going to go have lunch. Some of you are almost into dinner. Attend some of our other seminars. We have some great seminars. It's fun. Thank you very much. If you got comments on the seminars, how to make them better, send them to me. I'm always looking for feedback. Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.